Hi, this is Kenny Aaronson, and you're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com.
Hi, everyone. John Liebman here. You're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com, the number one place for learning bass online. We have a very special guest this week. He's played with everyone from Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Rick Derringer, Billy Idol, Sammy Hagar. He's the bassist on Brother Louie. I listened to that today. I paid more attention to the bass line than I ever have before, and it's a good one. I didn't even finish introducing you. My bad. Please welcome Kenny Aaronson. How you doing, Kenny?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. It's like I said, I've heard about you for a long time and have one of your books, and then I guess thanks to Tom Guerra for hooking us up here. So
that's funny. Tom Guerra, guitar player, and he's I've gotten to know him over the years, and I interviewed him actually one time. I have a site called ForGuitarPlayersOnly.com, but just recently he sent me his newest record, and I said, that's really good bass playing. Is that you too? He says, no, that's Kenny Aaronson. So thank you, Tom, for hooking us up. I've been a longtime admirer and follower of Kenny and his music. So thank you, Tom Guerra. Shout out to Tom.
Absolutely. He's a sweetheart.
From what I can gather about you, you started out as a drummer like your older brother, and then you switched over to the bass after discovering the brilliance of the one and only James Jamerson. Is that about right?
I always heard the rhythm section growing up, and I heard music on a monophonic hi-fi system that my father built, and between that and going to my local pizza place all the time and listening to the jukebox, I just was always heard bass. I was always focused on the rhythm section, basically, but you heard a lot of bass on my home hi-fi and of course my local pizza joint. So I just always loved low end, you know.
You were included in that James Jamerson classic now, Standing in the Shadows of Motown.
That was a real honor. I came up basically starting out with original bands. You might know of Dust, which was the first band that did anything, which was just a hard rock band from Brooklyn, and we just strive to be original. So I never played in club bands or bar bands. I didn't play in top 40 bands. I listened to all that stuff. I grew up on AM radio. I grew up on Motown and Wrecking Crew music, basically my background, more so than say Muscle Shoals or Stax and the greasier side of that. So as I got older and moved on in my career as a sideman and started to play with more and more people, and then also doing bar work in New York City, playing with blues guitar players, I over the years just really sort of, that's how I kind of was a bit of a late bloomer with all of that. Is really, just because I started doing more of that work.
In those days, it was hard. Most people say, I loved James Jamerson at the time, but I didn't even know who it was because they never gave the credits on the. Were there any other bass players that you grew to appreciate or that were influences of yours in those days, whether you knew their names at the time or not?
Chuck Rainey, Carol Kay, Joe Osborne. To me, bass that sounded like bass, and I just always, to this day, I still, it's funny, I always thought of myself as a sort of a strange, not strange, but some combination of that kind of pop music and then the English invasion side, but not so much Beatles, but more like Who, Cream, Jimmy, Jeff Beck group, Led Zeppelin, Yardbirds, of course. Paul Samuel Smith was, I drove my parents crazy playing Yardbird records at home. I was playing in this original band, Dust, and we hardly even played. All we did was rehearse. We rehearsed in friends' basements in Brooklyn for years, and the band went through different personnel changes until we found Marky Ramone, Mark Bell, and we became the trio. Dust was actually a band that messed around with a lot of different styles of music, but we've become known as being the sort of proto pre-metal kind of band. It's like a cult thing, you know. But that's the band that got me started with my career. And then when we broke up, I became a member of Stories, and we did Brother Louie. There's a lot of stories behind all this stuff, which you would be interested in, but I know we don't have the time. But
well, we have a little time. I wanted to ask you about the Stories anyway, because that's such an
Stories was sort of I mean, if you listen to Stories music, it has nothing to do with Brother Louie. And what happened was the guitar, Dust, my first band broke up, Dust. Neil Bogart was developing the guitar player and our lyricist as producers. He gave them a shot to do some production work, and it was for another band on that label, Buddha Kama Sutra, called Exuma. And they needed session players to do this track. Neil Bogart had this song, Brother Louie, which was written by Hot Chocolate, the English band Hot Chocolate, that had a lot of hits. And he wanted to do this track with Exuma. He had the two guys formerly of Dust producing. They didn't know session players at the time. Who would have been the New York Cats, like Chuck Rainey and Cornell Dupree or Gary Chester, you know, and he hired Stories to do the session work. So Stories, the individual guys, you know, we just went into Bell Sound Studios. We recorded Brother Louie. Ian Lloyd, the singer of Stories, he put down a scratch vocal for the guy from Exuma to learn. When Neil Bogart heard the finished what we did, he went, screw Exuma, this is going to be the next Stories single. Wow. And so Stories had a second record out at the time that wasn't doing anything. And so they put Brother Louie on that and re-released it. So there's actually versions of that record without Brother Louie and then the ones with. And Neil Bogart said to us, he said, this is going to be number one.
And it was.
I mean, you know, those are the days, I suppose, the powers that be, you know, however they did things back then. But you know what? It was really that kind of record.
So the vocal that we all know on that song was never intended to be on the final version.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It was going to be us playing the instruments and the guys from the other band doing the vocals.
Wow.
And yeah.
Yeah.
So that started. So Stories had that hit, and we worked on that for a while on the strength of that record. And then after that is when I started to sort of go from band to band. And that's where my career as a sideman really started. And subsequently, each experience taught me what to not do in a lot of cases. Like, for instance, when I played with Leslie West, and we did a Cream song in the set. And of course, you know, I was a big Jack Bruce fan in the early days. And I had to try to play it like Jack, and Leslie would yell at me going, Ken, we don't need another Jack Bruce in the band, you know. And it was just stuff like that you just realize, right, we don't need to be this busy, or, you know. Every band like that you would learn.
How about your bass? Your basses, what are you playing these days?
Well, it depends. I have my, well, two of my favorite basses are these Ibanez Roadstars that I picked up dirt cheap back in the mid to late '90s. That I would never part with. I still have my 58 P bass
Oh,
that I recorded Dust Records with back in the day. Um, this has got round wounds on it, so I
I was
use
just going
that.
to ask if you had flats on there. You have round ones.
Well, that one I have round wounds on it because it really sounds good if I need something for really rocking on.
What kind of round wounds? What kind of strings?
These are Labella
Ah,
hard rock and steels. I have I have a fretless ESP. Um, I have a '65 Framus Star bass, which sounds like a Bill Wyman. It
I
sounds like a
was,
Stones record. It
yeah.
sounds like a freaking Stones record when you
I
use it.
I pictured Bill Wyman as soon as you said that.
Yeah. I have one of those. I've got a Hofner. I've got a 5-string G&L if I need to go with a 5-string. I got my '63 Fender Bass 6, which sounds amazing, and I'll do things like old school sounding stuff, and I'll use it for tic tac. I'll double like an upright sample.
You pretty much a labella guy though, as
Yeah,
far as string.
yeah. I'm using labellas. Um, Actually, what I really like is I've been using them for years is the labella nylon tape wound strings, the
Yes.
760Ns,
Mm-hmm.
because they're quite bright when you put them on, but they mellow out real nice. They don't put so much tension on the neck as a real flat wound, and you almost get the same effect. Although I do have one of my Ibanez's with real metal flat wounds on it.
I want to ask you about playing bass and learning bass. As you know, I'm a bass educator. ForBassPlayersOnly.com is really a bass instruction site. We've got people from all over the world coming to ForBassPlayersOnly.com every day to learn bass. So I wanted to take this opportunity to tell you touched on something earlier that about don't play like we got enough Jack Bruce or something like that. But most of the people that come to For Bass Players Only to learn bass are men in their 50s, 60s, 70s. They're not trying to set the world on fire. They're not trying to be rock stars. They just want to play some classic rock riffs, some blues shuffles, maybe some walking bass lines. They've got some time now. They want to learn how to play bass, build some confidence, have fun, play with their friends. So in that context, what advice do you have for someone like that who wants to learn bass? What do you think is important for them to know?
Well, I learned from listening to records over and over until my parents thought they were going to just pull their hair out and drove my neighbors crazy. There's a lot of regrets that I have, in the way that I went about things, but that was what it was like when I was, I'm going to be 70 years old next week. And that's just the way we just did things that way. Yeah, I learned from records. I took a few lessons here and there. I studied with Ken Smith, Smith Basses.
Really?
He used to live in New York City. He was a
That's
New York
right.
guy.
I was at his shop when he was in New York.
Listen, my advice is what I just said about the way I learned. Listen to your favorite people on record or CD, whatever. In my case, it was vinyl. If I spend 12 hours a day, every day of the week, trying to play like Jacko, I'd never do it. It's just, just not going to happen, which is fine because I don't want to play like that. But there's always those people that I've loved over the years, whether it's Jacko or one of Fusion Cats like Stanley Clark or this one or that one, that something that they play will stand out to you, it affects you on some level and you go, and you kind of maybe learn a bit of it, but whatever it is, you kind of take it in and you regurgitate it out in your own way. It becomes sort of something that you take in and you use it somewhere, not exactly like that, but it just becomes part of a little new thing and part of your vocabulary.
In your own way is the key words, or the key words.
And to me, it's like I love people that can, they're in these, I'm sure you've seen them, there are these cats on YouTube that like purposely have learned how to play just like Jamerson, with one finger and anchoring the hand on the pickup plate cover and all that. I'm not going to spend my days doing that, but I'm always channeling him because I've listened to so much of that music. It's just in you and it comes out, and I hear it. Chuck Rainey, the same thing with me too. I used to worship Chuck, and I've always, I like lots of different things bass wise, but I've always loved bass that sounded like bass. That's why I love 60s pop and soul music and R&B so much, because to me that's what a bass should sound like. Fat.
What would you be, Kenny, if you were not a bass player?
Finding music and being lucky enough. I gotta be honest. I'm gonna be honest with you. Don't think of this in any. I'm just being honest with you, okay? I was never some great ambitious person, and I never had lofty goals in my life to do this or that or whatever. But I always loved music, and I always wanted to do something with music. And at the same time, I'm lazy, and I never wanted to do things like my brother went through schooling and went to Juilliard, and he played with the New York Philharmonic.
What?
I was a total opposite of that. I just learned from passion and by having some ears that were half decent, that I could hear well enough to get it, But I don't know if I didn't luck out with the way things worked out for me. I don't know what would have happened. I experienced working for the post office for a brief amount of time, and it was just a horrible job, at least my experience of it. And I'd hate to think that that's where I would have ended up. Now, things that I do love, I've always been into trains. So as a part of me, I would have liked to have been a railroad engineer. Believe it or not, when I'm on the road, I'm always looking for trains. I'm always like, it's like if I see trains, I'm just like, I just love trains. I don't know. I don't know. You know what? I think I was fortunate to have a passion and enough talent of some sort, and with the timing of what went on in our lives back then with the Beatles, allowing one to actually have, with some luck and some talent and just the spokes falling into place, you could have this career playing in a rock and roll band. I don't think that will happen again like that.
Hey, are you related to Kenny Aaronson? People ever get your names confused?
All the time. Just pisses me off to no end. No, I've worked with Kenny a few times.
I was going to ask you that.
He's a great drummer. We actually played great together. I wish we played together more. Kenny's a great drummer. I'd love to play with. I'd play with Kenny anytime.
I could listen to you talk all day, Kenny, but
we don't have it.
Well, we will. Maybe we'll do a follow-up when you have something new and exciting to talk about, as I'm sure you will. But thank you so much for sitting down with me. I know our audience is going to love it. Happy birthday. By the time this comes out, your birthday will have just happened. So happy 70th to you.
I really appreciate it, John. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. And anytime, stay in touch. And if you could do it again, that'd be great.
Thank you. Thank you for all your time, and congratulations on all your success, past, present, and future.
Thank you very much, man.
With bass legend Kenny Aaronson. I'm John Liebman. You're watching the #1 site for learning bass online, ForBassPlayersOnly.com. It's not for everyone. It's ForBassPlayersOnly.com. Let's play bass.